My name is Lee Wilson, and this is my research project proposal presentation for SLIS 705 J50 Summer 2021 for Professor Kawuya. And my topic is Employee Safety in Libraries while delivering equitable access to general public. The safety of the library employees with equitable access in libraries for the general public. So my study is publicly funded libraries, which are by nature are open to everyone, face the challenge of ensuring equitable access to library collections and services, and at the same time ensuring the safety of the employees who work in these institutions from the various harassment stalking from the general public who have access to the library building. I've been working in libraries for 23, almost 24 years. I started August the 4th, 1997, when I was 16, still in high school. And I'm not ashamed to say I'm 40 years old now. And I've worked most of that time in public libraries. And I just completed 2 years of academic libraries, working at the University of South Carolina upstate. I've seen firsthand on both sectors how the general public can come in and make the employees feel unsafe, how they may feel harassed, how they may feel some type of uneasiness or feeling uneasy when it comes to giving equitable access. This project, I came up with research questions and hypotheses. Here are three of them on this screen. I have three more on another screen. The first one that I came up with was, should the general public continue to be allowed access to publicly funded colleges and universities? The no hypothesis on each one would be leave everything as is. The hypothesis I came up with was restrict the general public from entering. Public can come in when the majority of the students are off campus for the day. Another question is, should stricter guidelines be implemented for the safety of the employees in public libraries? Should we screen the public before they enter the library building? All patrons must have an institution card of some sort with background checks done before the card is completed. The general public should have limited access to the building. They can only use age appropriate computers, age appropriate areas. And due to COVID 19, should the time limit on how long they should be in the library be implemented? And Title IX usually goes with the employees when it comes to academic
Too
libraries.
bad.
Should that be something that the general public have to sign on to in order to get an institution card? Another question is, should the employees of publicly funded libraries, academic and public, be allowed to defend themselves when faced with callous behavior from the general public? And I came up with, should the employees be trained on how to deal with the callousness of the general public within reason? Along with the research questions and hypothesis, how can librarians and staff feel safe to come to work every day and deliver the best quality of customer service with being harassed, intimidated, bullied, or be made to feel inferior? Should conflict resolution training happen while during orientation? Another question is, how can equitable access be accomplished with the safety of the employees in mind? Should there be training on how to deal with unpleasant patrons while keeping the employee safe? And finally, I came up with, how can future librarians and LIS train and be prepared to deal with safety issues in publicly funded libraries? And one question I came up with, or one hypothesis, was offer classes for future librarians in the LIS program. This way they can get hands-on training before they actually get out of the program, and they have some sort of feel for this can go on. We did some type of training, and I'm equipped to handle it. When thinking about the theoretical or conceptual framework, I went with two of them. The first one I went with was Bates hit the side of the barn. This one is a good one to get a jumping off point. If you don't know where to start, you just get a couple of keywords, and that's just your starting point.
Pretty good. How about yourself?
The main one is B.F. Skinner's behaviorist learning theory. His behaviorism is primarily concerned with observable and measurable aspects of human behavior. In dealing with behavior, behaviorist learning theories emphasizes changes in behavior that result from stimulus response associations made by the learner. Behavior is directed by stimuli. An individual selects one response instead of another because of prior conditioning and psychological drives existing at the moment of the action. In all of our classwork, I went with my research design as being action research. I almost went with case research, but the action research seemed to fit better with my research proposal. Since I worked in the academic library sector, I'm an organization member. I can see the firsthand what can and should be done in a way that someone from the outside looking in will not be able to ascertain. And the methodology, I went with action research because you have to take actions or interventions. There's a valid theory of safety measures for all people who frequent the library and steps that can be taken in order to start the process of ensuring that the safety by all is met and equitable access to libraries is upheld. And it's a method that analyzes a distinctive social phenomena that can't be duplicated outside of the confines of the research study. There are four actions that I thought about you can implement and measure, and then you can go back after a certain amount of time. Station a security guard at the service desk for 60 days, and after that 60 days, you can evaluate and see how well that worked out. Self-defense classes for employees for 30 days, and after the 30 days, have a survey to see is that something that we could continue or something that needs to be done away with or something that needs to be reworked. Conflict resolution training once a year during the staff development day where everybody's together and they can just have like a round table where they just have open dialogue. And something that libraries use right now, they use code words for level of comfort one-on-one interactions with the general public. The one I can think of is the green, yellow, and red folder. So if you have a green folder, you say you need a green folder, everything's fine, everything's cool, everything's under control. You ask for a yellow folder, that means just stay close by my side just to make sure nothing happens. Just have my back and just be prepared. A red folder signifies that you need a security guard, you need a supervisor or someone in charge because the person on the other side of the service desk is making you feel uncomfortable. And after that, you should have a survey to follow. That's something that you want to continue. The actions will be measured on the success or failure of the data collected from the surveys in order to determine if the library will continue moving forward with these actions or change the actions to better equip the library employees. Thinking that my project is about equitable access to publicly funded libraries to the general public and safety measures of the employees and students of these publicly funded institutions, I would try to develop an hypothesis to test a hypothesis to test my theories or actions. So qualitative methodology would probably be the best way to go. Some methods that I would think of using for the data collection would be interviews, both individual and focus group, observation and audiovisual recordings with an agency that specializes in conducting and observing interview methods and data collecting. Surveys and interviews conducted in the beginning and at the conclusion of the actions will determine what actions would need to be continued or need to be reworked or disposed. And using the interview methods, both individual and focus group, be able to dissect different groups of subjects to get an overall census of the amount of harassment that goes on in their institutions, grounds, and how or what measures could be used to ensure the safety. Semi-structured approach would also be used. You get different groups of people and you would see, you would split them up just to get a more open dialogue. Some people may not feel comfortable talking in big groups. Some people may not feel like if they were in the same, they were in different gender groups that they will feel more open. So that if they were in the same group of same gender, they may feel more open. And you may have some people that are not comfortable speaking in large crowds or their voice gets lost. So want to give them the opportunity to have their voices and opinions heard too so they can contribute and more data can be taken in order for us to find better ways to give out equitable access to the building, the materials, and the services, and keeping employees safe. Using observation, I can get nonverbal cues that can't be explained in words. I can get different body language. I can see someone with their facial expressions, someone shaking their head, drumming the fingers on the table, so on and so forth. Just nonverbal expressions of answers that researchers can't quantify. That can signal someone's disagreement with overall conversation, or it can offer a different point of view toward a question that somebody didn't think about. And when you have the audio visual recordings, that way you can record everything and you might have missed something. You might have missed someone who may have a subtle cue that you might have missed, or you may have misinterpreted something someone said. And if you have the audio visual recording equipment, you'll be able to get a more accurate answer. And for the interview method, the data collection instrument will be the interview guide. And for the observation method, the data collection will be done via surveys and questionnaires. Follow-up questions and follow-up questionnaires will be given out to collect data to see if the changes that were implemented are effective or should another course of action be taken. And a hiring company to help record, assist, and help finalize the findings will be a tool in the qualitative methodology. And all of the questions will be provided in the appendix. About my project, Equitable Access to Libraries and the Safety of Publicly Funded Library Employees, qualitative methodology is the one that best suited my research. The qualitative method will be more heavily used in my project, and I can incorporate surveys and questionnaires in order to find subjects for my research proposal, as well as get a sense of what type of subjects to include in the research proposal. The questionnaire can ask interview questions that can gauge if the subject is the right fit for the research proposal. Qualitative method will be used to interview, observe the process of the research rehearsal. And it was going to be mixed methodology, but it's mostly qualitative methodology with some quantitative methodology incorporated. For the qualitative methods instruments, I will use interviews, face-to-face and focus groups, and observation. The qualitative method, the instruments I would use are questionnaires and surveys with interview unstructured questions for triangulation of instruments. My sample plan, I would start off with the purposive sample. I already have knowledge of the sample population, and this will be a great way to start the sample. The subjects will be chosen in public libraries, academic libraries that are non-private who let the general public go on their grounds. I wouldn't need to use private libraries if they do, since they would not let just any patrons come off the street and access their buildings. And I'll also try to combat bias within the purposive sample by using SRS, simple random sample, and that should aid in sampling and cut down on the bias of conducting the purposive sampling. The source of the data sample will be academic and public libraries within the counties of GSP, Greenville, Spartanburg. And for the sample size, I can get 4 different groups of 6. One group female, one group male, one minority male, and one minority female. This way we can get a more open dialogue and we can see if anybody who is not comfortable talking about harassment, stalking within the opposite sex will have more freedom to express themselves and give more open answers, and that will help with the data collection. And I could also do individual interviews for the people who don't feel comfortable talking in large groups, or they talk in large groups but their voice is overshadowed by the group. I feel like everybody's feedback is valuable, and I want to make sure that their voice is heard and they're contributing to the research process. Conclusion of the research study, my results will be finalized and presented to the board of directors for each participating library. So at the discretion of the board of directors and each head library coordinator, the results can be shown during the library's annual staff meeting, day, annual conference, or whatever kind of big meeting they have, in order to present to the employees to gain knowledge, for training opportunities, suggestions, and ideas moving forward. And if they have any other feedback employees and supervisors may have in the future. This way, the open dialogue is out there, and there's a roundtable for all employees to give their opinion, give their comments, feedback, questions, concerns. This is the opportunity for them to have that open dialogue, so that way some changes can be implemented. These are just a few of the limitations of the study, and by all means, this is definitely not all of the limitations of the study. There's bias, money, planning, administrative, time, emailing surveys and questionnaires, internet capability, data analysis is subjective, not factual, legal and ethical issues, the availability of subjects, travel for the subjects, and the moderator of the study. Some ethical considerations and remedies: the concern for population to be studied or human subjects, proper handling of the information collected in the study, informed consent, funding or sponsorship of the study finding sources, access to the researcher, national laws, policies, and regulations. In dealing with a diverse group of library employees from each sector, and with so many people participating in the data changing hands so many times, there are some of the ethical considerations surrounding my project. IRBs, which are institutional review boards, will have to be implemented in order to maintain ethical integrity. Getting informed consent forms will have to be obtained in order to gather and share the information along with maintaining anonymity and confidentiality. Also, the AIS, the Association of Information Systems, Code of Conduct will come into play to aid in ethical integrity. Transparency from the researcher and all governing bodies, anyone outside of the study, outside companies who aid in data collecting, data analysis, observation recording companies, will make the contact information readily available and respond to questions and or concerns within 24 to 48 hours. All of my appendices are located at the end of this presentation after this slide. There are 9 different appendices in my presentation. They range from the interview questions. They range from the questionnaires and the surveys, the follow-up questionnaires and follow-up surveys. It has a sampling plan to find out who would be included in this survey, in this research project. It has charts and graphs and information from other studies that I found that would be helpful in my presentation. And at the very end, there's some information about stalking. It was just something that I found if anybody had needed help or didn't know where to turn, that's a great resource. This is the end of my presentation, and I thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Thank you.